Hello, team, and other teams, and accumulated audiences. This is myself, Jonathan MS Pearce, at ATP Geopolitics, doing a co-stream with the awesome pair, because it was going to be three others. Jonathan Fink is unable to make it last minute. So it's Greg Terry from the Greg Terry Experience and Prof. Gertis from Prof. Gertis Explains. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
We have a lot to talk about, no doubt, because there have been some huge announcements, or maybe not so huge, depending on what your view is. Long-awaited announcements. I say long-awaited, really, just before the weekend. Around the weekend, we were hearing that Trump was going to be making some big announcements concerning aid to Ukraine and possibly changing his stance on supporting Ukraine more overtly. And we've been waiting with bated breath, really, I think, if I can speak collectively for us all, for this. Although I have to admit that what I thought would happen has indeed been the outcome here. It ended up being fairly predictable. How do you want to go about explaining all this? Shall I just read out a summary? What are your initial thoughts before we go into the details?
I don't want to toot our horns, but this is exactly what I thought would unfold yesterday. There was too many clues out there, and over the past 3 or 4 days, I've been counting it down and trying to give facts only. And I had literally just released my morning update, and I had the Russian response. Putin was already ticked inside the Kremlin, and I can share about that a little bit, or people can go back and see it. But at the same time, Peskov was putting out commentary that they already knew this was coming. They were expecting it. And then Dmitriev put out his tweet saying, listen, can't we all just get along and shake hands? And we see all of that. But what happened is we've got weapons that will be flowing through NATO. We've got good weapons, supposedly. We need to wait and see the official exactly what it is. We've heard 17 Patriots, all of that. That's all great. Okay, but I'm reading Ukrainian media right now, and I'm reading Ukrainian analysts. They're very thankful. They're very happy. Additionally, I think one of the things that triggered this that nobody probably is looking at, but I mentioned on my earlier video today, and that was we're seeing governmental change, especially in the ambassadorship in the United States. That was a requirement for Donald Trump to do anything. I promise you, he hated Makarova, so she had to go. We see Zelensky making changes. My big thing that we have to watch here is the 50-day sanctions and waiting for that. And let me tell you why, and then we'll talk about it. Because 10 days ago, we now know that Vladimir Putin told Donald Trump that he needed 60 days for the summer offensive. And now 10 days later, we get a 50-day deferment on sanctions, but they'll be tough. They'll be 100% or something. Guys, by the time 50 days get here, we're not going to even be in the same planet. I mean, we will be, but the news will be changed so much in 50 days. It was just yesterday that Lukashenko was in with the former president of Moldova, reading him the riot act about how the West is coming and how we've got to stand in Moldova and go back and take Moldova. And we see Estonia firing HIMARS. I mean, you name it, guys. We're 50 days from those sanctions. We're going to be facing a completely different war because Ukraine's going to receive some weapons that they can absolutely smash Russia with. And then what is Russia going to do? Then you throw on top of that, North Korea, fully committed to bring power, fully committed to help. Throw China in the mix. It's going to be a crazy summer. That's where I'm at.
Johnny, what's your shirt say? Skeptic Inc.?
Yeah, I used to write for the Skeptic Inc. network, which can be,
Gotcha.
the acronym would be SIN. So there you go. I think it's quite apt.
Thank
Okay,
you, everybody, for being here, by the way. We appreciate all of you jumping in on all three channels. This is breaking right now. We're just trying to give you the most factual and accurate updates with the analysis.
So the reason I asked Johnny about his shirt was because, it's fair to say over the last couple of days, I've been saying, hey, look, this has changed. Like within the last week, I've been saying, hey, Trump's tone has changed. And I laid that out and I showed, hey, this looks like a good sign. And then, hey, Trump said this. No, seriously, he said that this is about to happen. And other people are talking about this and that and the other thing. But the most common response I got was, well, I'll believe it when I see it. Fair, absolutely fair. Believe it when you see it. So I think we need to go to that point where in less than a half hour or so we should be having something to believe. But that's been a pretty fair stance for people, because they feel like they've been jilted too many times here with Trump might do this, Trump might do that, and then he's been like, he hasn't zagged yet. So I'm hoping to see our first zag. I think we'll see our first zag.
I'm really pleased in the way that that Greg has set out that Ukraine are going to get these weapons. We're going to talk about what they're going to get and what we know, which is actually not a great deal at the moment. But I'm also a little bit underwhelmed because all of this is essentially the US selling stuff to Europe. There is no, at the moment at least, there is no declaration that there is going to be any presidential drawdown authority being utilized. That may be part of it. We just explicitly, we don't know that yet, which means that the US isn't giving anything from their own stocks and not ordering anything from USAI funding. This is just the US selling stuff to Ukraine, which is essentially the US doing business, and it just so happens that the business aligns with helping out Ukraine loads. But it's Europe that's coming up and buying all this stuff.
Fair.
So that is a little bit underwhelming for me, although all of that stuff they're going to be buying is going to be great and really needed, and there's quite a lot of it.
So last year during the election, I was saying, I actually predicted this, saying that, okay, in a worst case scenario, I think you'll see a system where Trump could very well sell to Europe, who has the money and doesn't have the weapons, sell those weapons to Europeans, who will then provide Ukraine. And that seems to be what's about to have to play out here, which is a lot better than what the last 5 months of Trump have been, right?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is transactional, right? So
Sure.
if he's going to help someone, it's going to be, well, what do I get in return? Which is, in this case, business. It is making an economic gain, having some economic stimulus, and that the shame is that there is no kind of strategic thinking at a deeper level in terms of, right, we've got $3.86 billion of presidential drawdown authority, already appropriated money that is there ready to go, and he's not dipping into that. At least he's not officially said that yet. There's USIO funding that could be given at a ratio of 26-1. The Senate Armed Services Committee has just voted through an increase of $200 million to $500 million within the NDAA. So that's the National Defense Authorization Act. So that's the DoD budget, although that needs to go through the Senate. But the idea is that there are lots of ways that the US themselves can help Ukraine right now. And Trump has chosen not to, at least he's not communicated this, he's chosen not to use any of those options. And this is all about NATO member countries coming in and spanking a load of European cash, which is great.
That is correct.
But I would like to see that, and the US helping, and sanctions be kind of a little bit more than taco, a little bit more than 2 weeks, now 50 days. But anyway, that's my
No, I understand the frustration, because if you're frustrated, imagine how frustrated I am with Trump.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I'm experiencing.
I can't stand Trump. Okay, I can't stand the man.
Yeah. So I'm frustrated with.
Hang on, but at least we have something, guys.
Yeah,
it could have been nothing.
And that's where I was just about to go.
100%.
That's where I was just about to go. The net effect is still going to be, even if you're not happy that he's selling it, the net effect is still going to be Ukrainians are going to get these weapons. And that's what matters at the end of the day right now. And the Europeans who want to step up with weapons don't have necessarily the weapons to step up with. So let's just make the deal, man. Just
yeah.
Okay.
So the question
one
is,
other thing that I would say that would temper what you were just saying. And people are going to say, oh, you're just defending Trump. No, I'm not defending Trump. Let's just take a step back. America has a different position where they have to keep their eye on what's happening all around the world, not just in Ukraine. And they should have been doing more for Ukraine. And I've now passed 3,000 videos saying that, right? I mean, I've been consistent here. So if they are, let's take a step back. If they are trying to, like, what's going to cook off in China, what's happening in Israel, what might happen somewhere else, they may have to hold on to some drawdown authority, let's say, in order to let's give the greatest benefit of the doubt. I still think you should do more, but in the in the kindest view of this, that might be what's going on. I don't think it quite is. I don't think his heart is to support Ukraine. His heart's to make a deal, but he also has a whole different problem set than some other places. Let's say Finland, right? Finland has a pretty clear and present danger right on its own border with Russia, but Finland's not going to be worrying about Taiwan or Israel. Is that fair?
But sort of. But the problem is you've got Elbridge Colby and Pete Hegseth previously saying no to a bunch of aid, supposedly because the stocks are low. But those are stocks that would never go to Israel. As Valery Zaluzhny has just said, the US has 170,000 Hellfire missiles.
Yeah,
they're going to go obsolete. And that's what you put a stop to.
I hope they sell them all of them.
Yeah, well, no, but that was going through, previous aid packages.
Yeah, I understand. Colby, it's a contradiction.
You've got all sorts of things going on. Yes, I kind of agree with you to some abstract extent, but also Pete Hegseth and Elbridge Colby are doing things that are problematic.
They're
Ukraine
way on the isolationist. I don't want to help Ukraine side. No doubt about that. I'm not arguing that. Yeah. Not at all.
Hello, Andrew Petrie. I'm happy that the United States, however it's going to happen right now, is going to sell weapons through NATO and get them to Ukraine. Yeah. Because the most important thing right now is those skies need to be defended. As we are analyzing this, over 50% of Ukraine is currently under air alarm, and it's just the reality. So I have
question, Craig. Sorry.
I have to separate this in my mind. Okay. Because my expertise, I mean, I'm wearing the coat Pete was wearing when he was ashamed of the West right now. And I figured today is a good day because Pete would have a smile on his face today. I pull this out very rarely. It sits on my Ukraine stuff over here in a very prominent place, and it's hanging. But today, I think Pete would be happy that at least the West is working the United States to get some weapons there to protect, most importantly, the Ukrainian skies. And then secondly, whatever we have that will come that will be offensive. We can talk about that as we actually see it. And I even said that on my video that is now obsolete. I put up 45 minutes ago. We'll have to wait and see. But for me, I'm more concerned about the 50 days because I just do not see in a global economy when you're a deal maker and we've got all the issues going on right now, China, Taiwan, the Iran 2.0 is not over, guys. Iran yesterday closed their airspace. Turkish Airlines canceled all the flights to the Middle East through the end of July. There's some things going on. So the globe could destabilize in a moment, and then you're going to put sanctions or tariffs on Russia in 50 days at 100%, and then also on those that assist Russia or however that unfolds. I just do not see that happening ever.
It may not. It may not, but the line that was important to me was not that your last clause. It was a sentence before that, where with all that's going on in the global economy, and that's what I was referring to is that the U.S. has kind of a different stance where it really, really, really has to pay attention to everything simultaneously. Now, with that being said, that's not an apology for not doing stuff for Ukraine, because we should have been doing stuff for Ukraine all along.
There's a couple of questions. One is, how quickly are these weapons going to go to Ukraine? Because if they are Patriot systems, I'm rather unsure of where they're going to get them from, because you would expect them to be buying them from and I don't know if they have any just sitting around waiting to be. I think there's a bit of a waiting list for these systems. I would have thought PAC-3 particularly. They need the anti-ballistic missile variant. So I'm interested to know, okay, here's a quote. Let me show you some of the quotes, because actually we haven't really gone through this yet.
Yeah, we need to, because there's something interesting.
Yeah. So this is US President Trump is now appearing at the White House Faith Office luncheon, and he confirms the deal with NATO is now fully approved, fully done. He said, "We had a great meeting with NATO, the Secretary General, and we're going to do something a little different for this country. We're going to supply weapons to NATO at a large amount. They're going to deliver the weapons, and they're going to pay 100% for the weapons. We're going to be doing that with NATO, and it's fully approved, fully done. We'll send them a lot of weapons of all kinds." So that's really important. So what other weapons are we going to see? And they're going to deliver those weapons immediately to the side of the war, and they're going to pay. He said another couple of bits here. So Trump said he was very, very unhappy with Russia and threatened them with secondary tariffs up to 100% if there's no progress on a peace deal within 50 days. He said it's got to stop, and criticizing all talk from Putin as Russia continued its attacks on Ukraine. He confirmed a deal with NATO allies, mostly from Europe, on new weapons deliveries that will help Ukraine, including much needed Patriot missiles that will be sent within days. So I presume missiles can be sent within days. But he said 17 Patriots. Now, it's clearly not Patriot batteries. That would be insane. So that's going to be, I guess, that amounts to probably 3 batteries at the moment. And that could be the 2 that Germany are going to fund, the one that Norway is going to fund. And Germany said this morning that they were going to be able to get hold of more than 3 batteries, more than 3 Patriots. So we're kind of unsure of how many Patriots, I guess. And then just finally, Rutte said that Ukraine will get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment. So it's clearly going to be kind of more than just kind of Patriots and interceptors for air defense and on missiles to fight back against Russia, and urge Putin to take Trump's warning seriously. And then I have some more news on weapons in a second. But any kind of comments on that, guys?
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I agree with you, Johnny. First of all, it's not 17 Patriot battery systems, that's for sure. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. Secondly, I tend to agree with your numbers right now. We already know that watching.
Hello, you've gone.
What's the matter?
You've disappeared.
He said.
Oh, now you're back.
You just stopped.
We couldn't hear you. Stopped being able to hear you. Speak.
You said watching, and then you stopped, and like you saw a bee or something.
But I'm actually hearing.
Okay, yep, that's cool. Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, there you go. I was hearing something in my ears, so we're back. Okay, thank you. But that was crazy. The reality is there's not that many systems available. So I tend to agree with you. We also know that after the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, that supplies were depleted, and that's just what we hear, publicly stated, whether it comes out of DC, it comes out of Israel, they were struggling with supply, or other places we know Ukraine is struggling with supply. So it's not like there's a vault somewhere under, Nevada that they're going to go and open the vault and out comes all these Patriot systems and missiles. So I do for sure know that there will be Patriots coming. And this is what I told on my video just an hour ago. We now need to actually wait and see. And the only confirmation we will believe, or I will believe, which I have no doubt weapons are coming, will be when Ukraine says, okay, we have received 2 batteries.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have received 15 missiles. Because now we're hearing about these offensive missiles. What is the THAAD systems, or I can't remember which systems. And I don't want to talk about them because I want them to be there, because then you get into speculation, and we always want to be factual. But the reality is, with just a touch of speculation, if Ukraine takes American weaponry and strikes Moscow, I don't know where this war is going to go. And this is where I still remind people that Vladimir Putin is all in. Donald Trump is in for 3.5 more years. European Union changes leadership. Macron, has his political issues. The UK, I don't understand anything about the UK, so I asked Jonathan. But Vladimir Putin is in for life. Kim Jong-un is in for life. Xi Jinping is in until he wants to get out, or there's something crazy that happens there. Ayatollah Khamenei going nowhere. So we need to be very, very sensitive to when we talk about offensive weapons, and I want offensive. I can tell you right now, breaking news 2 hours ago, Moscow already started moving air defense systems to Moscow 2 hours ago.
Yeah. Turns out incentives matter. This is the first thing they'll teach you in any economics class, and the incentives have been lined up all wrong so far.
So, well, yeah, and to be honest, that I'm very thankful for that, but we just need to be prepared as we are. I'm getting ready to head back to Ukraine in a couple of weeks. We're prepared. We're supporting all the wonderful people watching. You donate, you want to be informed and educated. But the reality is we better be prepared for an escalation of this war.
Well,
Yeah, and this is where we talking about other weapons. So as far as I can work out, some of the claims have been air-to-air missiles, short-range missiles. There were rumors prior to the announcement that they may have been keying up to release some JASM, some cruise missiles that
That's the
could go,
ones. Thank you.
it could go 1,000 kilometers. And I said initially this morning, I said I find that incredibly unlikely because I think from Trump coming from an appeasement point of view to switch suddenly to allowing Ukraine to have air-launched cruise missiles that can hit Moscow, I think is a step way too far for thinking Trump would allow for that. That is going from appeasement to escalation. And although I'd love them to get JASMs, and I think that would be absolutely brilliant, and it would open up all sorts of air bases to be hit. I think it's unlikely, but hey, who knows what may emerge. So I just to give you a little bit more detail on the Patriots here. So Anton Gerashenko here saying President Trump said Patriot batteries and missiles will arrive in Ukraine very soon within days. Quote, we have one country that has 17 Patriots getting ready to be shipped. We can wonder about what that exactly means. They're not going to need them. The 17 will go, or a big portion of the 17 will go to the war site. That could be done very quickly. So just to qualify something that Greg said earlier, when he talked about Israel having Patriots, Israel does not have Patriots and does not use Patriots missiles. So they didn't use any missiles up in the 12-day war. What happened is the US used some in Qatar. As far as I understand, Israel have now basically sent their Patriots, as far as I'm hoping, to the US to be refurbished. Their old Patriot, probably PAC-2, so not able to shoot down ballistic missiles, but they sent them to the US to get refurbished. And it could be that some of those are the ones you can immediately see, but they will not be anti-ballistic missiles. So that is significant. And just, sorry, the last bit before letting you guys go for it. Trump confirms more, this is no reports, Trump confirms more US weapons will be sent to Ukraine through NATO, including an early shipment of Patriot missiles from Germany. He says the US will manufacture the weapons, NATO will pay and decide their deployment. We'll make the best weapons, but we're not paying. So he's very big. He's communicating to his electorate, to the MAGA base, that this is just a business transaction. So that allows them to be happy and not kick
that's
off.
the way that he has to frame it for that base in order to continue, in order to do anything. So I think that's an important key that needs to be noted. Like, I know you're upset, but at the same time, if he can get it done by appeasing that crowd and still getting the same effect.
Yeah, because actually, I was saying yesterday, Darren, and you probably might agree with this, that the Epstein files are the biggest thing in US politics at the moment. Like, Ukraine is playing a very distant second fiddle. We might, outside of the US, like, we might be all about Ukraine and wondering how, like, today's announcement will actually, more important is how he's dealing with his own MAGA base with regard to the fracture that's happened over the Epstein files. Now,
Right.
if he had given weaponry from US that wasn't bought by Europe, if he had given PDA and stuff, then that would have been seen by his MAGA base to be part of the deep state. And he would have been seen, like, you would have put the Epstein file cover up together with Ukraine and said deep base, deep base. And I think that would have been, I think he had to do this at the moment, at least.
So do we have any video of Trump's statement here?
Ukraine reporting 17 Patriot systems are being prepared for shipment to Ukraine.
You said systems, not pieces. 17 systems. That's
17 systems.
I think, Johnny, can you declare that that's a zag?
So that, but again, it depends what's going on here. So, like, if you've got, so what's there from Israel? Were there 5 or 8 systems that were obsolete?
6.
It was 6, okay, and I think one's already gone. Possibly, one might already be in Ukraine from that. So that, if there is 17 systems, that's phenomenal, right?
Okay, well,
and
I mean, assuming
way
that
more than I would think.
What he just said wasn't a lie, that Greg didn't just make that up. Can you declare that a zag?
Well, no, because I think that's probably confusion over systems versus batteries and components.
Let's say that Greg is true. Can you call that a zag?
Not really. I just think that is selling everything. No, I mean, this is great.
You give Trump a zag.
Well, no, this is great from Trump, but it is, like, I would assume he doesn't have 17 US systems, right? So if there are 17 systems, that is relying on Israel. I mean, we can say, well done, Israel, well done, this country, well done, that country. It's everyone together. But Trump is not
to make
giving
sure
US
that these systems are going to Ukraine. That's not a zag. Like, at what point will you give Trump credit as a zag?
when he does
That's what I'm
more
asking.
than sell stuff. Now, if this entails more than selling stuff, then that's fine. No, and this
Okay,
is
so
great. I'm
he
not.
has to give US funded
Yeah,
stuff in
like
order
I
to
think.
actually have zag toward Ukraine to actually show that he's doing something for Ukraine.
Well, it depends what I mean. He is doing stuff for Ukraine here, definitely. Like this is definitely a movement from where he was. Absolutely, I'd give you that. Definitely, this is much better than what he was doing. But
It's not
it's just
everything
when
we'd
I'm
like it to be,
no,
but
yeah, I know.
still,
It's just
it's
when I'm
still
comparing
helping
to the
Ukraine at the end of the day.
absolutely. But when I'm comparing to the Biden administration, where it's like here it's all the stuff that the US can do and give from their own stocks and blah blah blah. Actually, since January the 20th, there's literally been zero. And when it comes to today, which is fantastic. I don't think any of this will be coming from US stocks, or if it is coming from US stocks, it will be sold from US stocks. So
Yeah, so what?
I just think this is really useful and it should be celebrated. And this is great, as in Ukraine should be celebrating. Should we be clapping uh,
That
Trump
wasn't
on the
my
back?
question. Did
Well,
did Donald Trump zag toward Ukraine was my question.
yeah, yeah,
And
he's
it seems
definitely
like this is a legit zag.
yeah. This is definitely moving.
It's not
Definitely,
everything we'd like it to be,
yeah.
but it's a legit zag, I think.
I'm
Finally.
enjoying every minute of this.
It took way too freaking long to get here too.
That's kind of my point. It's like so this like the idea that we congratulate him for doing something he could have done on January the 20th kind of annoys me. Like because I had an argument with someone who's a massive Trump
Certainly.
supporter who was like, "No, this is amazing." It's like, no, what would have been amazing if he didn't spend 6 months waiting for this and having Ukrainians die? You know, so yes, this is a move back to, but it's where it should have been. We're congratulating Trump for being where he should have been previously. But anyway, that's by the by. This is good.
All right.
This is definitely good for Ukraine.
Listen. Johnny, you know how big Ukraine is.
I do.
I've taken you over the entire country. If 17 Patriot battery systems come, it will be a huge help to Ukraine and we'll be very, very grateful. It will
100%.
it would take about 8 to 10 just to defend Kyiv. Just
Well,
so you
but
guys
hold
know.
on, before you go on there, Greg, what Zelensky asked for was 25. They have 8. Here's 17.
I understand.
So that's what he had, the total that he had asked for. If that actually in fact happens, he's given the total that Zelensky asked for, even if, yes, of course, you can't defend everything, but that's
No, it's good. I'm saying this is all positive. We're very, very thankful. So we can get the skies much more protected. So let's go a different direction completely with this.
By the way, Johnny, I'm not asking you to put up a Trump bumper sticker or anything.
No, it's just it depends what you mean by zagging and depends what but he's definitely moved back.
I mean,
to
he
being
took a
more
step
pro-Ukraine.
toward pro-Ukraine.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Okay. I want to start with Mark Rutte trolling Medinsky and saying that Russia sent historians to negotiate in Istanbul, and he begins to throw out this rhetoric. Did you guys catch that as well?
No.
Okay, so he was trolling Medinsky, and it's there. The Russia. There's been no real possibilities for negotiations because Russia in Medinsky only sends a historian who gets there and talks about how great Russia was. Now that's what he does, yes, but what you're doing is when you feel a little bit of surge, all of a sudden the yapping dog begins to yap, and here's my deepest concerns. A is not a concern. I'm extremely grateful that the United States, whatever route it takes, and the Trump administration has chosen on this day to not abandon Ukraine, however that will look. So number one, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it right there because now we have to allow time, because we can sit here and talk about numbers and systems, but I will be telling you guys when the Ukrainian military goes, 6 Patriots just got here, 12 Patriots just got here. That's what we're going to do.
They're going to be happy.
Okay. B, this will, in however it unfolds, be an encouragement to the Ukrainian people.
Sure.
Which is vitally important right now because the morale is not the best. So this will be encouraging for Ukrainians. Fantastic. C, It will encourage the Ukrainian military to fight harder, to be able to even whatever we can get to assist striking in Russia. Ukraine doesn't need help striking Russia deep. We know that. But if they have more volume, they can be more effective. That's what we're talking about there. But I'm going to throw one monkey wrench in this. And that is, this doesn't help. That's too strong. The aid we're talking about right now assists in closing the skies, which is great. But it doesn't help that front line where it is horrible. Sorry, horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that in those passing phrases, we're going to send the best weapons we have, some other goodies too, whatever that turns out to be. We have to wait and see. So we not only need to close the skies, we can't do it completely, but we can make it better. So that's awesome. And I just need, for those of you that are watching, you've never been to Ukraine, it is the size of Texas. It is a very, very large country. You can look at a map and you can see that basically Ukraine is the size of most of Europe. It have lots of large urban cities that are still populated by million people or more, like in Kyiv, that need a lot of security and air defense in multiple layers, because we're not just talking about Kinjals and ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. We're talking about glide bombs, and we're talking about drones. Some of these cities like Kharkiv are so close to Russian positions, or Zaporizhia now, and even the semicircle, which I call a little metropolitan area there of Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Druzhkivka, and Konstantinivka under constant even FPV assault. So we're talking about a very difficult war. So we need to make sure we're understanding that, yeah, this is great for the air defense. This is great that Donald Trump and the United States just didn't say, bye, we got too much other stuff to deal with.
Or embrace Putin, even worse, right? I mean, that was the big fear, that he was just going to do whatever. I mean, if you listen to some, he was just going to do Putin's bidding regardless of what happened, or
that relationship.
I'm wondering about that relationship, how fractured
that relationship was always one-sided.
Yeah.
Please hear me on this. Always one-sided. Putin plays everybody, guys. Putin has no friends. Putin plays everybody. He is a true KGB trained killer. He is unemotional. Doesn't matter what he shows, and he uses everything for his advantage, and he can look you in the eye and stab you in the back at the very same second. That's Vladimir.
Talking about Trump or Putin?
Vladimir Putin. Okay, so the reality is that relationship was always more one-sided. Putin played him like a fiddle, and Trump thinks he has this bromance with Putin, and it just never was real for Putin. And he utilized it.
So I wonder at what point Trump wised up to that. Maybe he hasn't fully wised up. I don't know, because I'm just not in his head. But I'm wondering at what point, where was the line? What do you think?
So there's a couple of things I'm going to add to the real, like the zag, if you like, the benefits to what has been announced today. And it isn't just in terms of
JP.
Yes, Greg. Yep.
Before you go waxing eloquent, I can confirm to you guys right now, the first phase of this being confirmed by Ukraine 18 minutes ago is a $10 billion package.
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Missiles for air defense systems and artillery shells. That's phase one.
So that's actually NATO allies will buy around $10 billion of US weapons. The supplies ultimately bound for Ukraine include missiles, air defense weaponry, and artillery shells. But I think it's really important that these at the moment don't look like particularly offensive weapons. Yes, artillery shells are, as in, it would be great if it were things like, Bradleys and cruise missiles, etc., etc. But that is really good. So what's really important to recognize in Trump here, and this goes back to the NATO summit, which I think, if you're talking about lines or demarcation points, Darren, then actually the NATO summit is a really, that was a watershed moment, because he came away saying these guys really love Europe. They really love their countries. Like, we talked about this, Greg, didn't we? On a video afterwards, saying that actually, like, he has never seen people care for their country. He sees everything transactionally, and he went to the NATO summit and came away with an understanding that these people are actually geopolitically strategizing for the benefit of European safety, for the benefit of an alliance, and for the benefit of Ukraine. And they were doing it from their heart, and they were doing it for the good of, you know, something that was greater than themselves. And Trump, I don't think, has ever really understood that, or he's never really worked to that kind of approach to life. He's very transactional, and even when he's doing stuff for the benefit of the US, it's the benefit of the US is if it's a benefit to him. So he sees the US as an extension of himself. That's how I read it. And so when you get the rhetoric that came out of the NATO summit, and you get this rhetoric, this is really, really, really freaking important. So he said Trump gets asked how far he is prepared to go to settle this war. He stresses there are no Americans that are dying in it, but he suggests the need to get involved, as he says, having a strong Europe is a very good thing. Now,
that's
that is never something we have heard. So this is
the rhetoric has changed over the last 2 weeks, and I tracked out some of it, but with
NATO
Putin,
summit,
but that's big because that's not been discussed before.
And then he said this is along the lines of the NATO summit. Trump says he spoke with Germany and with most of the larger countries. They are really enthusiastic about this. They want this war to end, and they're willing to go very far. And then he talks about Putin, at how, you know, Putin has taken a mickey out of him. And indeed, I think this is really interesting. Anton Gerashenko, I think this is an accurate transcription. I speak to him, Putin, a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that's a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kyiv or some other city. And I say, strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say that the talk doesn't mean anything. I go home, tell the First Lady, I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit. Look, I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. And this is I find this comment hilarious. So he says, he's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me. Actually, he did. And he's admitted that he's fooled him because he keeps going, trying this appeasement thing and then being lied to and said, oh, that was a nice conversation. He should have realized this on the 21st of January. He should have come into government knowing that that's what Putin is like. So this makes me laugh, and not in a good way. But what I do say is that at a certain point, you know, ultimately talk doesn't talk.
Breaking news.
Action. It's got to be results, and I hope he does it. In other words, I think he has changed, and I think there is a realization that Europe are fighting for Ukraine, and that's a good thing, and he should be supportive of that.
Breaking news coming in for Ukraine from a guy I trust with my life. Thankful for the NATO deal coming in. Want to make clarity on the Patriot systems. Patriots will arrive in full sets. Some will arrive within a week.
Wow.
Deliveries coordinated. They're already in Poland, man. I'm confident of that. Deliveries.
Them,
yeah. They're in Lublin. Secretary General Mark Rutte. There is a country, quote, that can provide 17 Patriots. Maybe not all, but most of them will be sent to the battlefield. So here is the deal. Ukraine is saying Trump misspoke, and there is a country that can provide 17 Patriot launchers.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
One complex.
That's different. It's still something, but
I'm just clarifying. This is why I tell you guys, I will never. It wouldn't matter if I was talking about the North Pole and the Arctic Circle. I want to give you facts. So the deliveries coordinated through NATO under the responsibility of Mark Rutte. The understanding needs to be made clear, though. These are launchers, not 17 complexes. One complex has 4 to 8 launchers. So we are looking at back to the 3 systems, the 2 from Germany and another system that has been prepared or is being prepared to come to Ukraine. So that's what we're looking at.
And I'd add to that I'm fairly sure the AN-124, the Antonov big cargo aircraft that was kind of pieced together or fixed back in, I don't know if it's Borispil, but back in the Kyiv airport, that took off and then went back to Leipzig and then, you know, back to Ukraine, I think back again or whatever. I'm fairly sure that was delivering a Patriot, but anyway, and that was yesterday, wasn't it? And it had the call sign F Putin, didn't it? I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but this was
Wasn't aware of that. No.
yeah, so there were two planes that were going on over with call signs that essentially something like PUH, something like to do with Putin Huilo, and I think they were like F Putin 1 and F Putin 2, and they were like flying. One was this massive Antonov AN-124 cargo plane that is super useful. I mean, Ukrainians need that kind of kit. There's one hanging around that's been frozen in Canada that are probably stuck for illegal reasons, but I think the Canadians want to get that to Ukraine. But if they can use these, and you can get your Patriots into Kiev without having to bring them across the road.
Okay, so listen here closely, guys. I have a question for you two. I'm reading the Ukrainian. It's flying past me right now. All right. If I understand correctly, because I haven't even watched the video, Johnny just messaged and said, "Let's go live." And I looked down. Then I messaged Prof. I said, and I thought we were going to have Fink in here as well. Listen. Am I understanding correctly that it was stated if Russia does not agree to peace in 50 days, there will be tariffs and sanctions?
This is what we need to talk about. Yes.
Okay, because that's really what I wanted.
Statements have been tricky. Again, this is with everything, it's trust but verify. I wouldn't believe that until I saw the sanctions actually kick into place.
The question I have is why 50 days? Why 50 days?
Okay, so, because this is confirmed by Ukraine on the last call 10 days ago. Supposedly, I believe it.
Yeah, but just because something happens previously in time and space doesn't mean that that's what caused it, right? So that because he said it's 60 days and now he's saying 50 days, 10 days later. I don't know that that's necessarily it.
Oh, for me, that's how Trump thinks. Trump thinks like with crowns and magic markers. He was told
if he was already going down this path toward providing things potentially, I don't know that that's necessarily it. I don't know what's in his head. And by the way, for the comments, I didn't vote for Trump. I'm not defending Trump. I'm trying I'm trying to be as objective as possible. That's all. So
he didn't go down this path until the NATO summit, where he was moved emotionally by the reporter who had a husband on the front line, and there triggered something emotional in his heart.
We don't know when it was, but that could have been it.
I firmly believe that at least moved him 1% emotional to where he says, okay, something's got to change. And then we see everything unfolding. And then you can layer on top of it, guys, where he has issues in his own administration where it looks like, and I don't know, Hegseth or the other dude, whoever paused the Ukrainian weapons and Trump was unaware of it. Now he wants to flex and say, no, I'm in control of my administration. We're having problems with Pam Bondi, Bongino, Kash Patel.
Let's take that. Let's look at that. You could just as easily say that he's doing this because he figures 50 days is enough time to have this going on about Epstein.
No, I'll give you why
we just don't know exactly what causes the 50 days. And so
I'm trying to tell you though.
I'm
trying to tell you
a pretty decent theory of why it's 50 days.
Go for it, JP.
It's fairly pragmatic and actually it's understandable. So it could be because, and you need to look at kind of what he said. So he repeats his warning that if there is no peace deal with Russia after 50 days, then we have no choice but to do secondary tariffs. You call it secondary tariffs, which are pretty tough, which we don't want to have to do. Now, those secondary tariffs are essentially what the Blumenthal and Graham bill is. And in order for him to actually be able to come true on his words, and I'm defending Trump here, in order for him to be able to do that, that needs to pass through the Senate, and it needs to then go to the House of Representatives, and if the House of Representatives then change it and amend it, it needs to go back to the Senate for a vote in the Senate. And that, you are not doing that quickly. I'm sorry, but you can try and do that quickly, but actually
that's very reasonable that the process has to work out.
That he, like, in order for him to, he can't unilaterally, he can use these emergency powers that he has in place, that he keeps like enacting tariffs on other countries due to the executive order emergency powers that he's got. But I would say that that's actually problematic and illegal. I would actually argue what he's doing with tariffs anyway is he shouldn't be allowed to do. But here, I think it would be a bit difficult for him. And also he wouldn't want to see it as him totally responsible unilaterally for putting sanctions on on Russia. So I think he has to allow that to go through the Congress and then get it back so that he has that tool. Otherwise, that is all
I had
about
a
that
different theory
bill.
with that, and that is that Trump didn't actually want to do. Hold on, Greg. Do
Mhm.
you have breaking?
No,
Okay.
I'm answering your question.
Go ahead.
You asked why 50 days.
Yeah.
50 days from July the 14th is September the 2nd. September the 2nd was the day that World War II ended with the surrender of Japan, 1945. Just putting it out there.
I mean, that's as
Okay.
that's as potential as it is your theory or my theory or his theory. Who knows? We just don't,
50 days.
we can't say with certainty that this is why. We can only speculate at this point.
The
That's my
50
point.
days is not my issue or problem. I don't give a flying flip if it's 50 or 20 or 100. Okay, here's my problem. He says 50 days if Russia does not agree to peace. Well, I've got news for you. There are two nations fighting here, and the invaded nation has lost their territory, had their civilians killed, and Russia is in the process of stealing Lugansk, Zaporizhia, Donetsk,
Of course.
Kherson, Crimea. So we're going to get to 50 days, and then Putin's going to say, okay, well, I'm done, and we've got peace now. What that means is we've now had a capitulation on Ukraine, and they have to give everything away, potentially. And they're not fighting for that. So I don't even think we can look at that. It's so one-sided.
Okay, let's look at it the other way. He finally gave an if-then statement. He didn't kick the can and say in 2 weeks I'll reconsider. That's different. That's a different tone as well. And I'm not defending Trump regardless of what.
No, that is a valid point. That is a definite 50 days. If this doesn't happen, then this. It isn't like we'll talk about it in 2 weeks. I agree with that. But he needs to hold himself to that, and other people need to hold him to that.
Yeah.
Didn't he say he would do sanctions on July 1st, and then he changed the date?
I don't
Tariffs?
remember him saying
Tariff, not
he
on
would
Russia.
absolutely do something.
Global tariffs, and he gave the date of July 1.
By the way,
then,
these tariffs, I would interpret these more as, these sanctions, I would interpret as part of the tariff issue as much as anything else, right? Because it's going to attack China and India and whoever else is soaking up his oil. It's going to have the secondary effect of affecting Russia, but it's part of his. That's why you have such sign-on as well. I mean, like that's part of it. So, it's not like it's just turning the screws on Putin. It's more than that. So
regardless,
I'm confused.
Forward.
I don't know what the cause is, and I doubt that any of us in here really
Unfair,
absolutely know.
It needs to give some time for that to go through Senate. It just absolutely has to. So at least some of that time is
but
time.
I will have to
go
say
through.
that Johnny is at least right in the sense that it has to take some time. Whether that's the full story or not, he's right about that part, certainly.
Can I just do a bit of housekeeping, guys? So,
Please.
because there's too many, because we got 3 people's channels and lots of people watching, lots of people supporting all the channels. There are loads of super chats and gifted memberships and whatnot. I'm not going to read them out as we normally do, and I'm really sorry for those people who have been so generous, but just we don't have the time. But what I'll be doing is cycling them along the screen at the bottom to give you guys props for supporting, and we'll talk about ones that are particular questions, like this one from my favorite pro-Trump interview. Although he's on your channel today because I think me and him don't see eye to eye. So Andy S says, Prof, is it true, and I'll answer this first if you don't mind. Prof, is it true that the EU have more frozen assets than are paying them back for finance with interest than the US has? Is that unfair? I don't know what you mean by unfair, but the US only has $5 billion worth of frozen Russian assets. The EU has somewhere between 230 and 300 billion, right? So like orders of magnitude more, right?
Yes.
So, and that's because we use a system called Euroclear from Belgium to do lots of financial transactions, and that's through. In fact, Belgium alone has 230 billion at least frozen Russian assets. So we in Europe, or the EU over there, is that because actually the UK, Canada, Japan, and the US all have frozen Russian assets and are all using them in different, fairly similar ways. The US hasn't really declared what they're doing with their frozen Russian assets, and there's pressure on Trump to do do something with the 5 billion. But the EU at the moment is using the profits that are generated, the interest generated from those frozen Russian assets, to then underwrite loans to Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't have to pay back the loan. Instead, we pay back the loan from the profits. So we loan stuff to, or the EU loans stuff to Ukraine, and then pays back the loans themselves from the profits that come from the frozen Russian assets. But they don't use the assets themselves for a bunch of different reasons. But it's nothing to do with being unfair. That doesn't even make sense to the question.
I think you answered it correctly. I think we have a very tiny chunk of 5, and they have the rest. I mean, that's what it amounts to.
Yeah,
I think that's what he was trying to understand.
Yeah, I don't know about fairness, but Japan, I think, has probably got more frozen Russian assets than the US, and then you've got Canada and the UK, and we're all doing fairly similar things in terms of using them to underwrite loans to Ukraine. It's only that the US, I don't think, has decided anything. And Richard Blumenthal, the senator, was talking about this yesterday, where he was saying we need to do something about that. Look what Europe's doing, type thing.
JP, let me just do this real quick to help you out, because one of the guys that dropped a chat on mine, I'm seeing mine on the back end too, has a really good point on in regard to the 50 days and what we're seeing that will unfold through the summer. But I just want to say thanks to Dunk on You 23, Daddy Jim, Mighty Pellar, Eli, F Oink, Pether Olson, Appa Talks, Oink again, Papa Dutch always in here, Daddy Jim, thank you. F Oink, Papa Dutch, and then Eli. Yeah, not sure about other comments, but Greg's 2 big points, 100%. Be prepared for RU escalation, and air defense does not end a war; it prolongs it. I agree with that. Papa Dutch is the one. Paul Deberitz, my buddy. Trump also mentioned that Putin always bombs Kyiv, and that's after they talk on the phone. I want to say something about that, and then Martin, PE9 Tig, and F Oink, thank you. But Papa Dutch, he comes in and says the downside is, in regard to this timeline here, is if the U.S. goes all in, like weapons, tariffs, everything, all today, and then failed, then where do we go? So maybe there's some logic, and that's a very good point coming in from Papa Dutch. Just maybe laying things out with time frames gives more flexibility.
That's as good a theory as your theory or his theory or my theory or the Epstein. We just don't know. We can't say with certainty what it is. I should be wearing Johnny's shirt today.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd pay money for that. So yeah, I just think, like, initially I was like, oh, not another taco, not another 50 days. And I think there's possibly an element of that where it's just punting it to the long weeds. But then if you put, like, you can't just say immediately there needs to be a negotiation. So there has to be some kind of time frame on it. 2 weeks is just, like, practically, I think, too difficult to do anything. So I think you put all this together, and 50 days is where we're at. But yeah, I think watch out for the Senate. The problem with the Senate bill is that written into the Senate bill, Blumenthal and Graham's bill, is a waiver that gives Trump unilateral power to enact it and to pull it back as well. So it becomes his little plaything that isn't therefore dictated by Congress. And I think that's a bit of a shame because of the unreliability of Trump. Like, just from previous form, you know, even when it comes to looking at what he's done with tariffs, off on. And I can imagine, you know, with his form on appeasement for Putin, I just think that he's more likely to just threaten to use it rather than ever actually use it.
Okay, so you just stumbled on something that we ought to talk about. So where is he really, in your estimation, with Putin?
I think so. When you understand that Trump genuinely wants a Nobel Peace Prize, like when you like, he really actually does. He talks about it all the time. You need to factor that in. Sounds ridiculous because it wouldn't be on anyone else's radar in terms of international politics, but for Trump it really actually is. And he wants peace to happen, not because he's thinking strategically about peace, not because he wants a just peace for Ukraine, but he wants to be the hero that brings peace to Ukraine and Russia at whatever cost to those sides. He doesn't really care particularly. Now, if Putin is frustrating him from being able to achieve that, then he gets annoyed with Putin. Putin is standing in the way of him being able to get a Nobel Peace Prize, or him being able to sing his own praises about being responsible for bringing peace to this conflict. And it's the personal frustration he is having with Putin that is driving this.
So
That's
has Putin's dream-like hold over him, has it been broken then?
It's
Because
like
he
Don't
wants
Cry
that?
Wolf. Yeah, because Don't Cry Wolf. It's like, okay, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and eventually, like, even if you are giving him as much rope as possible, eventually you get to the end of the rope where you're just like, actually, well, this is going nowhere, and everyone's so. This is why I've long said, and I'm sorry to my audience for repeating myself, but if the Democrats and other politicians from around the world and media outlets have missed a trick in using the "you are a lapdog of Putin" approach to embarrassing Trump. And if you'd gone through with that approach, saying, "Oh, you are Putin's lapdog, you just do whatever he wants," you will embarrass Trump in public to the point where he would go, "Screw you, no, I'm not," and then go hard against Putin.
No, let me modify that just slightly. What you needed was not for Democrats to do that, because he would
Or
ignore
anyone.
that and punt it. What you needed was for Democrats to conspire with conservatives like me to
Yeah.
then have conservative voices, Ben
Oh,
Shapiro's and
definitely.
others,
Yeah.
lighting that up, because he would hear it very differently from his own side than he would from the Democrats, who he would
Yeah.
just ignore.
Oh,
But that's
100%.
exactly right. He did
Yeah.
need to hear, like, I've been very frustrated by this too, watching, like, I calculated wrong. I never thought that he would allow Putin to look like the alphas for so long,
Yeah.
and yet he did. But I think that might be a thing of the. I don't know if it's a thing of the past or not. I hope it is.
Yeah.
I'm reading Russian news now, and that I can read without translating it. It is incredible what I'm reading.
Yeah. What is it?
So first of all, they've already started putting articles out about which countries around the world hold the Patriot systems that could potentially be transferred to Ukraine. The United States, and then Saudi Arabia and Japan, and hold the largest supplies, and then Germany, and then the Arab Emirates, then Kuwait, then South Korea, Thailand.
Germany have admitted that they can provide no more. So Pistorius came out yesterday.
Germany's in fourth position with,
but they can't. They've already provided.
Yeah.
They came out this morning saying that.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and now here's another big headline right now in Russian news. Thank you, Donald Trump.
Is that sarcastic?
No, stock market just exploded.
Yeah, no, we saw this earlier. Actually, that's quite interesting. That was something I was going to mention.
I'm just reading the Russian news for you, so.
Yeah, but that happens quite regularly. I'll just find you something on that in a second. But that happens when they have these talks, and then the question is, how long does that last? And I essentially, it would probably just come back down to where it has been.
No, I just think I'm just reading their perspective. They're taking it as a positive that there wasn't tariffs or sanctions or any of that today, the 50 days out there. So the market's having a positive response to it.
Yeah, so here's Prune 60 saying, here's where you can see the MOEX, so the Moscow exchange, is doing in response to Trump's press conference. It's still going, so it's probably gone up a lot since then. So you can see that's really spiked. Press conference is over. I think we've typically seen happen is that the MOEX rises in hopes that the war will end. When they realize it isn't going to end, it then drops again. So and it's closed for the day. So yeah, that is, they're obviously getting excited, but then, it's probably the reality that it's going to drop over the next couple of days. But I'm interested in the rhetoric, which you've already referenced, guys, the rhetoric beforehand from Kirill Dmitriev and stuff like that, which, people like that who were basically indicating that they were panicking a little bit, I think, before this announcement. And I'll be interested to see what the tenor of their rhetoric is after the announcement. Have you got anything in particular, Greg, that gives us an indication of whether they are they indignant? Are they slagging off the US? Are they saying there's nothing to worry about? Are they
No, I'm reading an article right now where they're very thankful for the 50 days because this coincides. We're wondering why the 50 days, but Russia is spinning it right now. First of all, thank you, because it allows us to plan economically. Secondly, the reality is it's not putting pressure on us as Russia, but it's actually going to return the pressure to Trump and NATO when we do not move in 50 days.
Oh, they're
So
already saying
now
that.
it's going to be a reverse parallel pressure because the world and Trump actually sees that Putin is the better negotiator. It is obviously that he dictates the agenda because there has been no ceasefire. We have not come to any table, and everything that we have done and demand still remains on the table. So for us, this is a positive from the Russian viewpoint, because in 50 days, Trump will be under the most immense pressure he's experienced yet in his administration.
Okay. I want to say something here. I hope that they say they increase that rhetoric over the next 50 days.
I can't wait to get the official
Right.
press conference from Peskov.
Yeah.
I'll get it.
Yeah,
I'll translate
because
it for you
this
guys.
is absolutely wrong-headed for what being silent would have been a good tone for them. This kind of rhetoric is not going to help them long term, in my estimation, when we're looking toward what might happen 50 days later.
I love this.
I'm just reporting it to you.
Trump gets a zag for getting out of office. That's his zag, just leaving the post. Yeah, I'm as all those watching this can watch the really generous supporters of all three channels giving their super chats and statements here. Yeah, lots of talk about many different subjects here. System is a launcher, command and control unit, and a radar minimum. Don't you get a power component as well? Time 17 would be, yeah, so it's not.
I have an official statement. Sorry to step on you there, JP, but I have official statement from his name is Kosachov, and he is the deputy speaker of the Duma there. And he says 50 days. The only thing that will change in 50 days is we will have more territory. Our mood is fantastic.
Yeah. So with that,
this is how
50 days from now, nothing will be solved. We all know nothing will be solved. And he said it as an if then. He didn't say that as, well, we'll find out in 50 days if anything happens. So that's the if then is the headline of that story.
So what's frustrating for me,
that was not journalist, that was the assistant speaker there. So I'm trying to find reputable folks. Not that there are any reputable folks in Russia, but at least somebody.
We know what you mean.
Yeah, thank you.
What I'd like to see is 50 days. Ukraine to be given loads of offensive weapons to be able to do something other than just defend better, and this is kind of what Greg was talking about earlier. You know, like, what we're lacking at the moment, and they may be forthcoming. There are rumors that they are getting. Even Euromaidan Press has just released an article about JASMs might still be on the cards, but that may have been a pre-prepared article that isn't actually referencing the announcement. So I would love to see Ukraine be able to put heaps of pressure on Russia over the next 50 days. It might be that they shoot down all the ballistic missiles, and it's interesting that actually Russia are 50% down on ballistic missile stocks since May. So just in 1.5 months, they've used up 50% of ballistic missile stocks, which I think is significant. This is definitely good news. I think it requires, if the US aren't going to help out, then Europe really throwing in some significant weaponry, and we are seeing that. And Ukraine are building up their own industrial base. It doesn't include infantry fighting vehicles, doesn't include tanks. They don't have the ability to produce those. So there is. Yeah, I really would like to see more offensive equipment go to Ukraine next 50 days.
So, JP, I asked you earlier when it happened, and I can't tell when, but I think I know how the shift happened. And how was when Trump, I think, was convinced that Europe wanted to take the lead about Europe. When he was finally convinced that they weren't just saying, "Hey, you got the stuff, you can provide all this stuff. You keep doing what you," because he had that chip on his shoulder about, hey, they're just using us. That kind of mentality. I wouldn't frame it that way myself, but that's I think how Trump saw it. And when he saw the seriousness, and you might be right about that at the NATO conference, that might have been the when, but the how was when he. Okay, they're going to run with the ball. They're actually serious about this. I think that might have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. But that requires him. So you'll notice. Let me just finish.
Okay, hold on a second. What is Greg laughing about?
I'm reading right now another statement by that guy. He goes, "Yeah, Donald Trump just stated that the United States will finish the war in Ukraine 100%." Quote Trump. He goes, How'd that work out for you in Afghanistan and Vietnam?
Ouch. Yeah.
These are the Russians.
Yeah, talking back.
Yeah.
Listen,
Keep
we're gonna
up that rhetoric.
So here's the deal, guys. We need to watch and see what type of response Russia will have in the air against Ukraine after, because always it's after a call or after some land park event or something, a NATO summit. We see within a few days a large scale attack. I can tell you right now, there's already been launches from 5 different angles, and 250 shaheeds are coming right now.
So can I just answer what Prof was saying and sort of agree with him? So this whole thing is about when did he, what we're discussing is when he changed his mind, and I think it's one of the big ones was NATO, a bit of G7 beforehand, although he went there, he was annoyed with France and Macron. But I think what happens is you find that he changes his mind, or he changes his rhetoric when he's out of the White House, when he goes on his trip abroad. It's honestly, this is so important. So he has people like, you can even talk about Sergio Gore, this Russian-born or Soviet-born chap who's one of the 3 most important people you never heard of in the White House. You've got Stephen Miller. You've got these people who whisper stuff into his ear consistently when he's in the White House. And unfortunately, he spends an awful lot of time in the White House and Mar-a-Lago, and not enough time actually abroad out of that. When he went to the Vatican and spoke one-on-one with Zelensky, he changed his rhetoric. When he went to NATO and he's speaking to people and seeing the seriousness of these people, oh, this is what international geopolitics, this is what running a country is like. Okay, I'm just back in my cabinet where everyone just congratulates me and claps me and says how wonderful I am at all times, whereas these people are getting on and worrying about other things, and he gets a different appraisal of what actually politics is all about. And then he gets back home and people whisper in his ear and he goes back to his default setting. But the more he gets out and gets out of the grime of worm tongue whispering in his ear to King Theoden, then you really do see these changes of rhetoric and change of position. That's what you saw at NATO, and I think you're seeing that when there are other people in his ear, like Mark Rutte, I think has been really important here.
A couple of things I can give you right now coming from Ukraine. So there was a press conference or something still going on while we've been streaming, because Trump has made the statement, Putin, save your country. You are in very bad shape. Europe is ready to go very far. You have already lost this war anyway, period. End of quote.
Wait, Trump said that?
Yes.
That's big rhetoric.
Europe
that's a big, I mean, the change is just dramatic.
The rhetoric back and forth is happening, and I can confirm for you now, we knew it was coming, but Zelensky, Schmeigel will be the new Minister of Defense.
Schmihel, yeah. That's what I was. So just to let people know what's happened there. You've had Sviridjenko, who was the former deputy prime minister, has now been made to the prime minister. She was heavily involved in the Istanbul negotiations on behalf of the Ukrainians, integral part of that team. She's now the prime minister. The prime minister, Denis Shmyhal, has become the defense minister. The defense minister, Rustem Umerov, who has connections to America with his family there, has become the U.S. ambassador to the Ukrainian ambassador to the US. He's really important for changing people's minds. So this isn't actually being moved aside. The US ambassador is so super important for changing particularly Republicans' minds. As Greg said, Makarova, is that how you pronounce her name? She was a bit she was a bit unpopular. She'd rubbed people up the wrong way in particularly the Republican establishment, probably the MAGA Republican establishment. So Rustem Umerov could well be an important person there. What I'm interested with, just that's a bit of explanation, what I'm interested with you guys to get a handle on is whether this change of rhetoric from Trump will be, how it will be understood by particularly the MAGA supporters, because at the moment, the Epstein files has created this fracture, right? So are people going to go along with Trump? Because he has a very good history
Pick me.
You're picked.
See, just to finish, he's got a really good history of saying, I can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they'll still vote for me. So people will follow him, right? Will they follow him on Ukraine, or will they do the Epstein thing?
I'm not leaving to avoid the question. It's Prof's question, but there's somebody knocking at the door. So 1 second.
Yeah, no worries. So first, let me go back before I answer that question and say, Johnny, what you just said before Greg interrupted with his new bit was spot on. Absolutely, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And now let's answer the MAGA thing. I think that it's a very weird thing for Trump when there has been a kind of a MAGA revolt over. Now, I'm not MAGA. I'm a different type of I'm a different type of Republican. I'm a conservative, like Reagan Republican, and there's like different camps within the Republican Party. So, but I'm close enough that I can see this, I think, pretty well. There was a revolt with Epstein where the MAGA crowd felt betrayed because Trump had been and other Trump allies have been saying things like, we're going to release the report. And then like Donald Trump Jr. was saying this just a couple months ago. And then so they feel betrayed. And so ironically, people on the left and MAGA are more aligned than they've ever been on any other issue. It's a bizarre thing to watch. Okay, now, as far as Ukraine, the pivot toward Ukraine, I've said this a number of times on my channel that I think that what you saw with the pivot to Israel, where, they're going to bomb Israel, that showed us that it's not just that Republicans are isolationists, which has been a pervasive narrative, but that these MAGA Republicans, particularly, and it was MAGA in large numbers, because conservatives were kind of like me, were already there. Like, yeah, you got to bomb Iran to stop them from having it. Go ahead, go get them, right? But MAGA went along with, by a large number, like 70 some odd percent, 70, 80% went with Trump on Israel. And I think they'll go with Trump where Trump goes. Now that's for good or ill, like where Trump goes. Like I can't understand how Republicans that I know are like, yeah, we need tariffs. When do we ever need tariffs? What are you talking about? Like, so that's like running against Republican orthodoxy. But when Trump said it, they went with it. And when Trump said Israel, they went with it. And I think they'll do the same thing with Ukraine. If Trump says it, they'll go with it.
But you'll still have your Tucker Carlson, your Steve Bannon, and your Marjorie Taylor
Greene. I'm talking about rank and file.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's an interesting split, and I don't think you'll see Tucker Carlson come round to this.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker, you won't see those guys.
Really super frustrating. But I broadly agree.
Let me tell you this. Coming out of Ukraine right now, 100% reputable. So in analysis now that a couple hours have passed, and I'm reading it for you now, we see that Donald Trump has given Putin 50 days and threatened 100% import duties and its trading partners. The deferral of 50 days is an open window during which he is hopeful that a deal can be reached during the 50 days. So that's being communicated to Ukraine. 17 Patriot complexes is incorrect. It's 17 pieces or 17 launchers. We are expecting between 2 and 4 new battery systems. We see that Trump chose a calm tone. He did not refer to Putin as a killer or a butcher, as Biden did. He called for negotiations, but he did criticize Putin for continuing the war in Ukraine and bombing the cities. So we're thankful for that. And as of right now, at 1:55 Eastern, 8:55 p.m. Kyiv time, we do not have details of any other type of weapon that Trump is promised to supply. The American media is writing. The European media is writing, but Ukraine, we have no clarity on which weapon systems will be sold or transferred to us. The 50-day negotiation coincides with Putin's promised 60-day offensive. And this is what I was telling you guys earlier. Putin made that statement in the Russian media and supposedly made it on the call to Trump. The 50-day delay for negotiations also coincides with Putin's promised 60-day offensive to the borders of the 4 regions. And this can be viewed as Trump giving Putin more time, but in reality, it also gives us more time to take back our territory and to present a stronger position for our negotiations. So
but then that needs that extra.
There you have the fairest answer. That's
Yeah,
the
no,
fairest
that is
answer.
a fair answer, and I think, you'll probably find that there's a lot of what JP said that's right. There's probably a bit of what you and I said that's right, and probably even some of the Epstein that might be in there, right? So if we triangulate on this, we'll probably get to an approximation of the truth. But there's more than just any little bit of this being the answer for why 50 days.
Just a random comment here that I just want to completely agree with. Mitch Mazarel, thanks for this, mate. All sanctions should remain in place fully until all of Ukraine is made whole, literally and tangibly, irrespective of any ceasefire or imposed peace. Imperialism needs to have a prohibitively hefty price tag attached. I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think that would broadly be the EU's position. Probably UK's position is probably not Trump's position, as he would be happy to lift things if you brought about peace. So yeah, I'd be interested to see how that plays out.
Tupolev 22 M3s are on the move. They're in preparation for launch. Doesn't mean that they'll come and attack Ukraine, but they could be relocating from base to base. But the Tupolovs are moving right now.
I mean, I would argue that to take the narrative, what Putin normally does is have a big blow up night to kind of like he usually does that before a big NATO conference or something along those lines. So it wouldn't surprise me if he did something like that.
Bit of a warning here. I've been talking a lot recently, guys, and I don't know if you've been saying this too, but I have been talking about how I'm genuinely worried about North Korea's impact on the war. I think it's already. I think North Korea. My opinion is that North Korea's involvement in the war was actually a game changer. I know game changers used a lot, but actually, like if Russia are now presently using 40%, if 40% of their ammunition is North Korean, then imagine what the situation would be like now if Russia didn't have 40% of their ammunition. Imagine the situation if they didn't have the North Korean troops that helped then kick the Ukrainians out of Kursk. Imagine they didn't have, now if they have 25 to 30,000 more North Koreans coming, and if they have 25,000 North Koreans going to Yelabuga to work in the Tatarstan Shahid drone manufacturing facility to then go back to North Korea to manufacture those drones on behalf of the Russians, and if they have another 6,000 of sappers and reconstruction workers going to, these are huge numbers of people. If that's all true, that is massive, and Ukraine has to overcome all of that with already a very meager fighting force, comparatively speaking.
Plus 1 million laborers from India that has been talked about over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So
that hasn't materialized, and I highly doubt that it's going to.
They've got to replace. They've got to. Their war machine runs 24/7.
No, they've got to replace, but I don't see Modi allowing that.
Yeah, this is what I mean. They'd be desperate enough to go to Laos for extra people from Laos.
Well, they can do that as well.
They are in trouble. But yeah. So my position is do not dismiss the North Korean impact on this war.
I completely agree with that, brother. That's very fair.
Yeah,
it's serious, and they're pretty good fighters.
Do you know, it's interesting. Rudy Herman says this is a win for Zelensky's patience and faith. I have a wonder. So there was some talk that was it Macron and Starmer, or Starmer and Merz? I think it's Macron and Starmer spoke to Zelensky after the ambush in the White House, and they were like, this is how you need to speak to Trump. This is how you need to play Trump. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but Zelensky has certainly found himself in Trump's better books of late. And I think that's incredibly important. And Zelensky has probably played a pretty safe, decent game since February, since when he was ambushed. And I think that some kudos probably needs to go to Zelensky. And I wonder whether people like Starmer, Merz and Macron behind the scenes were also really working, and Mark Rutte as well, really working hard to make sure that the US is on side, not just with Trump, but the people behind the scenes, other movers and shakers in the American administration.
I'm just happy that you said the word faith and patience.
Well, different kind of faith, isn't it? Faith in reality. And
it can be, but just to get that word out of your mouth, I think it's just a great. I mean, we've got weapons coming, we've got rhetoric going back and forth, and Johnny has said the word faith today. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
I have faith in the good nature of some human beings.
So to KP's point, this is in addition. This is not releasing Biden stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is not even. Like this is, as other people have been saying, as we've been cycling through this, some have been saying that I think Suzanne Melendi put it well, Suzanne Melendi back here, was it? Yeah, selling Patriot systems to NATO for Ukraine is not a zag. It's arms dealing during a time of heightened global instability, war profiting, which is one way of looking at it. But the other way of looking at it is, well, he didn't need to say yes. So he said yes to selling stuff. Okay,
So
well done. But actually, he might have said no. So the fact that he said yes is better than him saying no, right? So I guess,
anytime I speak of Trump, people just assume that I'm all in for Trump with this like Mr. Zag or whatever. I'm just saying he has no internal compass that's pointing him this way or pointing him that way, and he can go that way. And he hasn't gone that way for a long time. Finally, we're seeing something. And I don't know how long it'll hold. I can't predict that, but it's nice to see finally.
The problem with Trump, I think, is his history with Ukraine and history with Russia, or going back to the Soviet Union, actually. So we can track it from the 80s through to now, and Zarina Zabriskie and other people have documented this fairly well. That he is somewhat compromised by Russia, and then hates Ukraine because Zelensky said no to the dirt on Biden, and you put those two things together, and he has a default preference for appeasing Russia.
I think you're right. He does have a default
Ukraine.
preference for that, but again, it's not. He's just overly
if you can overcome that,
transactional
then that's good.
on
Yeah.
top of that. And compromise, I don't know what you could do to embarrass the guy. Like,
Well,
has he not done enough? Like in the U.S.,
all you've got to do is look on Twitter. Like, all you got to just look on Twitter, and every other post, he's embarrassed. Exactly.
What could they possibly have that could?
So, I mean, in other news, the Pentagon just awarded Elon Musk company Grok the AI contract.
Oh,
so if you want to talk about chaos, what is going on in my country?
You got Palantir, you've got Musk's XAI. You got, oh goodness me, this is all this is a whole other hour's worth.
I know. Like, I'm just throwing it in there. But it's a part of the chaos. It's part of the story. You ask about, what rattles, or shames Trump. Nothing. But
yeah,
I'm this, guys, is going to be interesting to hear official response from Putin, and it'll come through Peskov, or it'll come through Zarubin asking him 2 or 3 questions, or we'll hear some statements from Lavrov, and that'll be interesting to hear. I've already heard the other stuff, but it'll also be interesting to hear. And Zelensky made no statements about it tonight in his response. He was just talking about the change in the government. And that'll happen in 2 days. On July the 16th is when all these people change their positions. And it's going to be interesting to see what type of retaliatory strike over the next 24, 48 hours.
Andrew Perpetua's in the chat, and he put Grok for president.
Oh, good. I need to have a chat with Andrew at some point, talk over what he's seeing on the front lines. But I think today is a better day than it was yesterday. I think Ukraine are in a better position going forward, largely thanks to the funding from Europe and the saying yes to the selling by the US. I'm desperate to know what other things other than defensive weapons are going to be part of this, and I hope there are.
I'm writing this down, but when we get to the point of we're concluding, I do have one question that I'm going to ask both of you. It's a serious question.
Well, I can claim the Fifth Amendment. I don't know what Johnny.
No. You both will answer it. I'm writing it down so I don't forget it, because I want your opinion on it, and I think others will too that are watching.
I've just flashed before you do that, Greg.
Just whenever you in.
Yeah, can you just remind us of that statement that Trump made about Russia having already lost the war? Because Mitch Mazerol is right in saying that Trump statement, Russia's already lost, is a bit of a tectonic shift in rhetoric for Trump. Hard to believe, but if true, it's fantastic. Yeah, I think that comes from the Faith Luncheon, doesn't it, that he's at?
He said that, and he said also that Europe's willing to go all the way. He didn't say the U.S. is willing to go all the way. He said you've already lost the war. Europe's willing to go all the way.
See, that's what I was pointing to, right? That it's the why has been that I think he realized that Europe's like really committed, which I don't think he thought before. That I can't point to when, but I think that's the why.
It's definitely a huge part of it. I would agree with that. He's seeing he's seeing reality, and it just takes me back to that one lady reporter whose husband's on the front, and I just think something, he got touched there for a second.
Yeah. And yeah, just gone through all the super chats. Really appreciate all of them. Thank you to all the people who have been so wonderfully supportive of what we are doing here. Mark Biscu, who's in Canada as a Ukrainian with honor, no comment to add. Just love seeing you three together and helping us understand
Thank
what's
you,
going
Mark.
on.
Can I answer that last one?
Let's go back to it. Yep. So
Yeah,
this
of
is Frank
course.
Simi. Putting any
Nobody
faith or
should put
trust
your
in the
faith
orange
or
man
trust in the orange man. That's straight out right. Nobody's saying put your faith and trust in Donald Trump. I don't think Greg's saying that. I'm very sure that JP's not saying that. I'm not saying that. Don't do look like I've been telling you, watch it for the actions, not just what's being said, but when they actually do it. That's right. But something seems to have shifted, and within the last week, it shifted.
Officially the world's best beard, Frank Simi. So thank you.
You have a nice beard.
For your contribution to humanity.
So I think we all agree with that statement.
Yeah. So Trump's new plan involved. CNN was what had some stuff about the weapons earlier.
I can tell you.
Trump's new plan involves sending a full complement of weapons to Ukraine via NATO. That includes Patriot batteries and possibly also short-range missiles, howitzer rounds, and medium-range air-to-air missiles. NATO allies will buy the arms, then transfer them to Kiev, according to CNN. So
and this coincides with what Ukraine said. I gave you 10 minutes ago. The only thing we know confirmed is, however, the Patriot systems will look that are coming. But as far as the actual detail of others things, we don't know yet. These are the things that are possible.
Yeah. So I have a pet theory that I'd like to hear what you have to say. Providing offensive weapons is different than providing defensive weapons in the way things are interpreted, but Europe is helping them provide, and I think some U.S. companies even are involved in helping them create or generate their own Ukrainian versions of some offensive weapons. Maybe that's why they're not involved in that. Does that sound like it's kosher, or like that might have some legs, that theory?
Well, the good news for Ukraine is if they don't receive any offensive weapons from the US, then Germany, for example, have been funding some kind of weapon. We're not sure what it is. It could be a missile that is analogous to the Taurus, which is why they've said they're not providing Taurus. It could be a missile drone. It could be a new type of drone. But they have been funding the Ukrainian ability to strike deep into Russia, and that funding will apparently come to fruition by the end of this month, which means that Ukraine will have the ability to strike somehow. And Christian Freuding, the German Major General, said that they are providing these to the tune of the upper 3-digit numbers. So that sounds something like 800. Now, if that is something like an ATACMS or more than that, maybe a Taurus, whatever it is, if you've got, 700-800 of those that the Germans are funding and helping to produce, then that is significant. And suddenly the next 50 days looks a little bit different if they are able to bring those weapons to bear. And if other nations, there's lots of co-production going on. The Ukrainians are also producing their Hrim-2 missile, which is this ballistic missile that's analogous to the ATACMS, 300 to 500 kilometer range. If that's coming online, and I think that's different to what Germany's funding, although they could be funding that, I don't know. But if you, as well as a German funded weapon, you have the Hrim-2, then suddenly Ukraine are able to take out like air bases. And we're all like popping the champagne corks.
Andrew Perpetua just commented, pretty sure that Germany is funding just the basic long-range drones. But nonetheless, the basic question still stands. If they can create their homegrown offensive weapons with European funding, then that still is taking away that objection from Russia about the offensive weapons, while defensive weapons still need to be provided.
Yeah, so what he's probably referring to, is the Luti drone, which is a twin-tailed drone that is the kind of the stalwart drone that they've been using frequently to do these long-range attacks. There are some saying that that's what they're funding. That was what they announced earlier, but there are also there is some evidence to suggest that there'll be more than that. But if it is 800 of those, then that's going to be super useful because they need to completely overcome. I get sorry, Greg, but I get really frustrated that the Yellow Booger production facility in Tatarstan. It's a long way away. It's like 1,300 kilometers or whatever, but that's still standing. And they have hit it a number of times. That should be overwhelmed by like 100 drones. And that should be a smoking hulk of a place. So they need to massively overwhelm somewhere like that. And maybe if they have enough of these Luti drones, then that will allow them to do that. Sorry, go for it, Greg.
I was just going to say, for me, like, I'm just wishing here now. I'd love to see them get a large supply of ATACMS again. They are phenomenal at using the ATACMS. You know, range it up to 300 kilometers and just start smashing. Ukraine was devastatingly good using the ATACMS system, so that would be a positive. You know, we hear also, I'm just reading a couple of things that Ukraine's talking about. They could receive additional type of missiles that are designed for the F-16 to be able to strike targets. There's a whole plethora of things. What's going to be interesting is this. You know, just reading where Ukraine was saying, they said, listen, you know, overall, we lay our heads down tonight and we're thankful, we're grateful that instead of, no, you're not getting anything, we're receiving some stuff finally. You know, we're purchasing it. We're being treated like people, not a third rate where we talk about you. But now we are actually able to say, hey, we want to purchase weapons. We want to partner with NATO. The United States is selling the weapons coming from assets that are out there. It's going to come through NATO, come into Ukraine. Overall, that is, that's really good for the morale of Ukrainians tonight. I'm sure Zelensky himself is going to crack a smile tonight, and it's a good positive thing. And then they said at the end of that, regardless, the next 50 days are going to be hell, and we need to fight. We need to work together. We need to volunteer. We need to labor because it's going to be very tough summer, regardless. And that's truthful as well. So we stand and we fight with those guys. You know, it's just going to be interesting. And I'll ask you guys the question I was going to ask you, because, like,
I think we'll start wrapping it up.
I think the only better thing that could happen is we wake up tomorrow, guys, and the Kerch Bridge was blown up. I mean, something like that would be great on top of this. You know, I mean, why not?
I didn't report this the other day, but there were scorch marks on one of the
thing going up,
pillars, which is kind of weird, but I don't know why you would attack it with something that would just scorch. Yeah, but anyway, something to add. Go for it.
Okay, so
Greg.
with all of you, and I really appreciate Andrew perpetually being in here. And dude, your work is.
Yeah, I talk about them regularly. I
24/7. I'm 24/7. You know, we're all 24/7. To be quite honest with you, I live and breathe. This is my life, your life, and I want to say thank you, Andrew, for all that you do.
I've said many times I wouldn't want his job. He took a tough path. He carved out a tough road.
You know, but man, kudos to Andrew, and thank you. You know, I've never talked to you personally, but maybe we can connect and do that. But man, thank you so much for all that you do. I saw your tweet about a week ago where you said, I took a day off, I'm tired, and come back and was overwhelmed. And I feel you, bro. Yeah. So thank you for all that you do. So with that, here's my question for you two guys. Everything we're hearing, we've talked for an hour and a half now, and we've got our viewpoints. Come September the 3rd, is Ukraine and Russia still fighting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly my answer.
No doubt.
Okay. My answer. Okay. Well,
all the rhetoric,
100%.
All the rhetoric that you've said today, like from that's just been coming out from Russia, they have no intention of stopping.
Agreed.
He still has a maximalist goal or some kind of weird. I don't know really what his goals are, because I was talking about this the other day. Like, he doesn't really have a plan, or at least, like, we're second guessing what his plan is, because I think he can't take all of Ukraine. So what realistically does he want to achieve? And then you're sort of wondering, well, how much good information does he have? Because garbage in, garbage out. Does he have maximalist objectives still? Because he really doesn't have a good grasp of what's going on in the war, doesn't really have a good grasp of how precarious the Russians are, although, you know, it's difficult for the Ukrainians, etc., etc. But the Russians are not getting to Odessa, right? And that would surely be at least like one of the kind of major objectives. You're not going to take the whole of Ukraine. Can you take Odessa? No, you can't take Mykolaiv, let alone Odessa. You know, you've got to get across the Dnipro River. And are you going to go to the Dnipro River? No, I don't think you're going to achieve that. Are you going to take Pokrovsk? Well, just about. You might take Pokrovsk. Well, whoop-de-doo. And not to denigrate, you know, the Pokrovsk or whatever. But so, you know, what I'd be interested to know what you guys think, as maybe a final question. Is what do you genuinely think he's trying to achieve here? My answer to that was he just wants to exhaust all the allies of Ukraine and then get whatever he can from an exhausted alliance, and then get, you know, Donbass, those five areas, like constitutionally you know, added to the constitution. He wants them legally recognized. I like, and he might get that if Trump, it gets exhausted and then says, right, we're going to call it quits and draw a line in the sand, blah blah blah. Then Ukraine probably wouldn't sign up to it. So anyway, what do you think Putin's actual plan is?
Prof, I'll defer to you first because I'm going to answer a different way than you. I'm a different. I'm going to answer from the Russian viewpoint.
I'm going to answer from Alexander Stubb's viewpoint. Stubb said yesterday that day before yesterday that Putin was a strategic blunderer. Like it was just nightmarish. Everything he's done has turned wrong. And I think he's going to continue to do what's wrong, and it's gotten worse, and it's going to continue to get worse. And like, as much as he thinks he's tough and getting better, what you were just saying about Trump, which was a great concept. Like, when he gets out of the White House, he actually sees things that he wouldn't see before. I think Putin has that in orders of magnitude. Same kind of thing. He's getting fed in his autocratic system misinformation that's not helping him win, and he thinks he can do more than what he actually can do. And I just think that that's where Putin is, and he's going to keep pressing because he doesn't know not to press, and doesn't know that the battlefield reports aren't accurate, and so and it's being fed up the chain incorrectly. So, yeah, that's all.
I concur with that. Yeah, I concur with that. I'll just take it from the psychological viewpoint. Vladimir Putin loves war. He loves destabilization. He loves death. He loves destruction. He loves being able to give a command and a missile is fired. He loves to be able to threaten and at the same time try to show himself as this one. Today he's talking about how women and, you know, have to have babies and school children are, you know, he is a deranged, evil lunatic. The problem is he's all in. And that's why I think September 3rd, it'll still be fighting as well. He loves it. He loves the war. He loves war.
I don't disagree with that either. He and actually, not so much he loves it, but he can't not do it, because to pull out of Ukraine,
he's going to have problems.
Economically suicidal and socially suicidal. But he's kind of stuck. He is stuck, Putin. But yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, chaps. Any sort of last thoughts before we hit the goodbye?
Sure. I want to give you the props for the greatest insight of what we were talking about between Greg and you and I, and that is that when Trump gets out of the White House, something changes in there, like in the way that he sees things and the way that he processes, and that I think there's something that really seems to have legs.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm a big on that. I think that is so important to understanding Trump. He is, because and why, and sorry, like to go on, but why Trump changes all the time is because he doesn't have any fundamental ideology, because he doesn't have a great knowledge of the things he needs to know stuff about. So actually he's fairly vacuous, and that means he has a recency bias where the last person that speaks to him is what he regurgitates. And if he's surrounding himself by his own minions in the White House in Mar-a-Lago, then the last thing he says is a thing that he's regurgitating from those people. So his ideology is a Project 2025 ideology of the people around him. When he gets out of that and those people are still in the White House in Mar-a-Lago and he goes on some jolly to a NATO summit, then the people around him are completely different. And then he's looking at these other people and he's understanding the dynamics of global geopolitics, and he's listening to people who aren't whispering in his ear, that just telling him how he is. And then he's like, oh, that's amazing. And then that's his recency bias. He comes back and says some things which are good for a couple of days, but then he sinks back into that default. So because he doesn't have the core knowledge to kind of have any foundation to more complex viewpoints on things, he is just kind of like, very vulnerable to just what is drifting around his head from what people are saying.
So I think personnel is policy for sure, and that's what effect is being played out.
And they freaking know that, right? So sorry, I keep talking too much, but when you look at these three, three people who are most important to him, it is Sergio Gore or Sergei Gorkovsky, who is of Soviet. He was born in Uzbekistan, I think, but he's of Soviet descent. His job is employing 4,000 people in the White House and around him. So he is massively important for getting the people whose ideology aligns to Gore and Project 2025 around Trump. Then you've got a guy called, what's his name, Mike Schaff or something like that. He is responsible for giving Trump all of the excerpts from news articles and the information that Trump had. So Trump doesn't go and read articles. He doesn't go and watch documentaries. He doesn't, he's fed stuff. And that's the guy that feeds him the stuff. And the third one is, and the most important one is Stephen Miller, who dictates the policy. So you've got policy, information, and personnel. Those three people dictate the entire information ecosystem in which Trump is ensconced. And so he is a victim of that because he has no fundamental knowledge to go against any of that. So he just soaks that all up and regurgitates it. Take him out of that, he's a different person. But he will gravitate back to that because that's where he lives. Mar-a-Lago and the White House. And those are the people surrounding him.
All right, Greg, top that.
I concur with both of you guys. In fact, I'll just take, I don't need to restate all of that. Both of you making great points there. You are a product of your environment. That's easy to see, and what comes in will come out, and that's just the way it is. So we'll see. So my best recommendation for all of us is now we have to look for some facts, because we've got a lot of stuff floating around today. So now let's start digging in and finding the facts. I'm looking very forward. It's 9:23 p.m. in Kyiv. We're watching the air alarms. I can tell you 50% of the country is under air alarm right now. We'll see the response of that. I'm looking forward to seeing the responses that come officially out of Ukraine, officially out of Russia, and also officially out of places like Viktor Orban in Hungary. So now I'm assuming he's probably peeling himself off of the wall. So it's just going to be interesting to see all of the rhetoric, and then even the Americans, to see how they respond to this. And okay, let's go with this. Let's push this. So now we just have to wait and see. But my concluding statement is this: over 5,000 people watching on all of our channels combined. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody on ATP Geopolitics. Thank you to everybody on Prof. Curtis Explains UA. And thank you everybody on Greg Tier Experience. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you for everybody. Prove me wrong. Thank you everybody for taking time out of your afternoon just on just an impromptu stream where we're trying to give you the latest updates. And we just say without you guys standing together, we're all hunting for truth together, and we mix it all in and we'll find it. And we thank you for all of that. And thank you for supporting Ukraine, and thank you for fighting for what is truth and right, and agreeing to disagree. We may not agree on everything, and that's great. I mean, we all know that Johnny is a born again, tongue talking Christian believer. He just hides under that beard and hat. But, other than that,
don't give me the frustrated Christian argument. It ain't true. I'm a dyed in the wall non-believer.
Yes, you are. Just tighten your anus and everything will be okay. Here we go. But no, the reality is that we present that example for you, and you do it in life. We don't have to agree on everything, but we agree on the main things. And the main things is fighting for truth and standing with Ukraine and fighting for what is right in this world. And we thank you, each and every one of you.
Thank you for caring about Ukraine.
Yes.
And can I just add, just because Viktor Orban came up, so the last thing I'll say is a fun fact, and many of you won't know this, but in 1977, Viktor Orban did actually, he went through an audition to be Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars, and he only missed out to the prosthetics by a slim margin. But the fun fact for you that Viktor Orban was almost Jabba the Hutt in 1977 in Star Wars.
Is that for real?
No, of course not.
Okay.
But it could be true. Prove me wrong, as Andrew said. All I have to say is Slava Ukraini.
Gerom Slava.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you, guys.